Alright guys, welcome back to the West Georgia Sportsman. Today we are talking about one of my most favorite baits of all time. Could be possibly my favorite bait, competing kind of with the spinner bait, but that is the jig. That is the jig. We're going to be talking about different tips and tricks with jigs today, and it's not going to be a very long video, but I decided this would be a good one to do because this is a bait I've just been using a ton lately. We can catch a lot of good fish on it. But before we get into that, y'all go and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this, and comment all sorts of stuff like that. I love reading the comments, seeing stuff like that, liking the video, sharing it. We do have a giveaway coming up as soon as we reach 100 subscribers, so please keep that in mind. Share the video with folks so we can get more folks subscribed and get that giveaway going. But anyhow, we'll get right into the video, and we'll start her off by talking about the different types of jigs. And I got 4 different types. It's fairly broad on the types, but these are your main types of jigs. We're going to discuss each one, where you would use it and why you would use it, and kind of like its strengths and weaknesses. And we'll start with the most common jig, that is the flipping or pitching jig. They're very similar. Hope you can see that. And so what you're going to see, a lot of difference with the different jigs is the head shape and the cut of the skirt. And so you can see the head right here. It's very simple, very kind of just forward, nothing too complex there. What the flipping and pitching jigs are used for is really just overall a good jig. And this is going to be a bottom contact imitating a crawfish. That's why you put a crawfish style trailer on the back. Let me see if I can get that to where it'll show up. Hope y'all can see that, but a crawfish style trailer. So you're imitating a little crawfish moving along the bottom. And so this is really shines around wood, around grass, anything like that. And really, this is the jig that I'm going to have tied on 90% of the time. It's just a great all-around jig that I'm going to use for anywhere you'd use a Texas rig, you can use this. And the difference between a jig and a Texas rig, aside from, the jig only imitates a crawfish, a Texas rig can imitate a bunch of different stuff. But the Texas rig is going to catch a lot of fish, probably more than the jig, but the jig is going to target the bigger fish. That's why I love a jig. And you have, as you can see, multiple different colors, just all sorts. This one in particular has the color peanut butter and jelly, which is a really great color, really awesome jig there. One of my favorite brands is Dirty Jigs. That's what most of these are Dirty Jig jigs, and I really love those. But once again, flipping jig, honestly, just an all-around great bait for especially trees, stumps, grass. I use it all around there. And the action I'll work on that is I'll throw it up to the edge of the grass or in the timber and just bring it out, maybe even pop it once or twice and then let it sit. And if it's cold or if I feel like the fish are moving slow, I'll just drag it. I won't even pop it or jump it. I'll just drag it. But if they're moving a little better, then you can give it like that crawfish is getting up and he's swimming away. So you're popping up, pulling it, or giving it pop, 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 anything like that, looks like that. The next jig we're gonna have is a jig I don't have much experience with, but a lot of people love, is the football jig. So you can see that head really does, it kind of just looks like a football. And sorry about my hand in the camera, just trying to get it to focus on that. And I don't have a ton of experience with these jigs. However, I know that they are used a lot of times for if you're going to drag a jig across like a good mud flat, or I think you're using rocky areas a lot. I know that they are excellent baits for spotted bass, used in deep water a lot. So that can be kept in mind. As you can see, they do sit a little differently. Like when they're sitting in the water, they're going to sit a little differently than a flipping jig. Once again, imitating a crawfish. And in fact, most jigs do imitate a crawfish, except for our next jig. That is going to be the swim jig. As you can see, swim jig has a little bit different of a head shape, and that head shape is kind of more concise. It's kind of better for coming through grass and being reeled. So with this, what you're imitating is you're imitating a swimming bait fish. You can use it to imitate a swimming crawfish, but oftentimes swimming bait fish. That's why you would pair up, say, the pitching jig or flipping jig. This one's a flipping jig. You would pair that up with, say, like a rage tail, rage bug. This one is in Okeechobee crawl. So look at that. That's, you know, crawfish. Cut the front part off, leave enough to where it's, you know, not sticking too far out. But, you know, it's got 2 flippers, main ones on the back, 2 side ones. That's going to be on a flipping jig. Now, your swim jig, you're not going to do that. You're going to put on a swim bait. So here I have some rage tail, rage swimmers. And you're going to want to get something like a rage tail, rage swimmer, or another great one is a Kitech. And the reason for that is these have a crazy amount of action. The tail just swings back, back and forth, back and forth. And the reason you want that is, think of a swim jig as a chatterbait or spinnerbait without the blades. And what makes that that's useful for is, this is really what I use this for, is in the summertime when the bass are way up in the grass, I throw that in and I reel it out of the grass. And you're just imitating that bait fish that is in the grass, but you don't have the action that a spinnerbait or a chatterbait would with no blade on the front. So even though it's not that important with a chatterbait or spinnerbait, you really, really want to have a excellent trailer on here that is just going to really make some racket, so the fish have something to look at. And all you're doing is doing a slow reel through grass on that one. You can do some jerks with it, but really you're just imitating that swimming bait fish. And then lastly, we have the finesse jig. So this one has a different head shape and a different skirt cut. You can see the head shape. I'm gonna try to get to where you can see that. It's a very ball head shaped. So see, it's just a little round ball, and it's also cut different to where it has that skirt flared out in front. The finesse jig is used, as the name implies, for, and you want to have more finesse with the presentation you're doing. You're still doing a crawfish, but you don't want it to be big. So it doesn't have as big of a skirt on it, and it's kind of cut a little shorter and a little smaller. Here's another one, really great color with that one. And so what you're using the finesse jig for is in, like, they're oftentimes a lot smaller. So if I'm fishing in a creek for shoal bass, or maybe just bass fishing in a creek for whatever, that's where I'm going to employ the finesse jig. Or when I'm in a place with crystal clear water, with water that just, they can see everything, you're going to employ that finesse jig. It's going to sit on the bottom. It's going to look very natural. The skirt is going to look like that crawfish's little legs are moving around, going to look very natural. And I like to pair that up with something like a double-tailed grub. So here I have the Rage Menace grub. I think the color is called bluegill. Might not be, I'm not sure. But see that? That's a lot more of a finesse presentation. Just not near as much on the flippers, but it's still got really great kick action to it. And that's what you do with the finesse jig. Honestly, kind of working it the same as you would a flipping jig. You're just bouncing it off the bottom, and it's just that more natural, a little smaller presentation rather than the flipping jig. And even I have one here. You can use, instead of a finesse cut jig, just a smaller pitching or flipping jig, as you can see that. That can work too, but really that finesse jig is cut specifically for that. And you have a lot of other jigs that are very, very specific. Like I have a punching jig. You can see it's really big here. But those 4 jigs are your main types. They're going to really work. They have any of them besides the flipping jig is going to have very specific areas to use. But the flipping jig is what I have tied on 9 times out of 10, just because it's a great all-around bait. I can do whatever I want with it. And honestly, recently I've been catching a lot of fish with it. And it's just an all-around great bottom contact bait. And it's really great for round structure. Doesn't get hung up near as much as other baits will. But do know that if you are choosing between a Texas rig and a jig, the Texas rig is going to catch probably more fish, but the jig is going to be targeting those bigger fish. I caught my PB last year on a flipping jig at night, dragging it across the bottom. A couple weeks ago, I caught a 6.5 on a flipping jig. Last Saturday, I caught a 2.5 on a flipping jig. So honestly, just altogether, you're getting your better, bigger fish, but not the numbers. So a few tips when using a jig and you're pairing up that trailer. You got a couple different options. You know, you got the double tail grub, as we've seen. You've got your crawfish style bait like I have here. This is kind of not an exact representation of a crawfish, kind of like a, I don't know what brand these are, but these would be really realistic as a crawfish as opposed to what I just showed you with the rage bug. But I still really like those. But honestly, one of the things that you want to watch out for is don't necessarily match the color of your trailer to your jig. It's not as important to do that. In fact, sometimes you kind of want to offset the color, use a different color. And so that's why that will be great. Let me grab something real quick. Another great thing, and once again, the label's worn off on this, but pick yourself up some Bang crawfish spray. Give that a little spray on there, give it some scent. That'll really help with that. I use for rod size, for most of the jigs, I use a medium heavy, but for the finesse, you're probably gonna want a medium. Those are the sizes I use. I usually use braid with a fluorocarbon leader, and definitely go with the heavier poundage on your normal size jigs, because you see you got that weed guard there. That's gonna hinder your hook set. So you really, when I set the hook on a jig, I just put a ton of power into it. And so you want a little bit of a heavier leader on that to give you that ability so it doesn't just snap. When you first get your jigs, and I need to do it with this one, take your weed guard right there and bend it down to where it's setting. I'm trying to do it with this one right here, to where it's setting kind of right on top of the hook, opposed to being really far out from it. That will not only protect the bait better, it'll also get your hook set a little bit easier. Kind of flare it out too. You don't want to be just all bunched up. And all that's doing is, once again, that's protecting your hook a little better, and then that's also getting you a better hook set. But that'll end the video for today. Just honestly, one of the best baits I've ever used. I've only been using it for about half a year now, but I am just obsessed with the jig. I love it. It is an excellent bait, specifically that flipping jig, and the other ones are great, just only in, you know, they're specific what you're doing with them. You want to watch out for that. But the flipping jig is just an all-around great, you know, wherever you want to bait. Anyhow, that'll be it. We're going to try to get some more fishing videos. I know these informational videos aren't as fun as the other ones, but wanted to go ahead and put something out for y'all. But anyhow, as I said before, subscribe and share, like, all of that stuff. But anyhow, we'll see y'all next time, and God bless.